And then speaking of not amazing things, I love our like morally gray sapphics. I'd say it was like 3.5-star story, but 5-star art. There were so many sex scenes. This was a really interesting read. Absolutely thriving. There were so many of them. Hey y'all, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a returning viewer. I'm Maisie, and this is Maisie with a Z, and today we're going to be talking about all the books I read in January. I read 11 books. It was a pretty decent reading month. I read mostly 4 stars and 2 5-stars and 2 3.5 stars. I didn't do so great on my monthly TBR. I only read I think 6 of the 10 books I put on it. And I did start 2 of them during the month, which were Violet Made of Thorns and A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting, but I did not finish those in January. It's also currently February 18th when I'm filming this, so, you know, my memory might be a little hazy on some of the books, but we're going to try our best. First book I read was Roaming by Mario Tamaki and Jillian Tamaki. This is a graphic novel following 3 first-year college students who are in New York over spring break in, I think, 2009. And it's about friendships changing and kind of complicated friendship dynamics, growing up and like choosing who you want to be. I give it 4 stars. I'd say it was like 3.5-star story, but 5-star art. Like, it was beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful graphic novels I've ever read. I don't know where it comes in comparison to On a Sunbeam, which I absolutely adore, but it's absolutely gorgeous art. Like, I would recommend reading it just for the art. But like, the story's not bad. It's just, I wish there'd been a little more like character development and that one of the 3 main characters had been a little more likable, or at least not hateable. Beautiful art, good coming of age story. It's a really quick read because it's a graphic novel. I'd definitely recommend it. And yeah, that was 4 stars and my first read of 2024. And then my next read was A Fragile Enchantment by Allison Saft, which I'm now realizing I have not yet posted my review of on Goodreads, despite reading an e-arc of it. Like, I genuinely thought I had posted my review. So that's a later today problem. This was a really interesting read. I love Allison Saft. It's very Regency England inspired, where our main character is coming from like the Ireland of the world. She's able to stitch emotions and memories into fabric. This makes her a very in-demand dressmaker, and so when she's summoned to Avaland, which is the England of the world, to make dresses for the upcoming royal marriage, then it's a really big opportunity for her. She ends up getting close to the prince and some of like his upper class associates, and there's kind of like a dislike to lovers between her and the prince, but there's also a lot going on with unrest and mistreatment of people from her homeland, which are, you know, Ireland, and like the working class. I don't know, it's a really cute romance. It's gorgeous writing. Allison Saft always delivers on the prose, and the magic system is so fun. It's a good read. If you like Regency England inspired books, then you're going to enjoy this. My only complaint is I wish the like subplot with working class mistreatment had been a little more developed. Like, that subplot feels very weirdly paced, and I don't know, I think that it needed a little more work. But other than that, really enjoyed it. This was a 4-star read. Oh, and also it's Roaming had a sapphic relationship, and this has our protagonist is bi. I don't remember if the love interest is bi or not. But as I was saying, Allison Saft is working her way up to like one of my favorite YA authors for her like gorgeous prose. But also I loved her female protagonists in both this and Down Comes the Night being bi and it being completely normalized, and it's so good. We love bi representation. So yes, that was A Fragile Enchantment. I need to post my review of that later on Goodreads. Now we're going to step out of order a little and talk about the 3 acotar books I read, because I finished acotar in January. I'm very proud of myself. Absolutely thriving. Did I mean to finish this in December? Yes. Am I still proud I finished it? Also yes. So first, A Court of Wings and Ruin, I gave 5 stars. I didn't like it quite as much as A Court of Mist and Fury. And I really enjoyed seeing Farah come into her powers more and seeing more of Nesta and Elaine. I don't think acotar does epic battles quite as well as Throne of Glass does, but it was still really good, super enjoyable. I think it was a good conclusion to the first like acotar trilogy. The original acotar series deserves the hype it gets. And then I read A Court of Frost and Starlight, and I gave that 4 stars. Not because I didn't enjoy it, because I did enjoy it. It's just, it's a novella, and there wasn't that much else going on. It's wintry and fluffy, and sort of finishing up Farah's storyline with her processing her trauma in relation to art, which was part of her character in A Court of Mist and Fury, and kind of got like glossed over in Wings and Ruin because they were in the middle of a war and there wasn't much time for Feyre to be painting regardless. But here she was processing her trauma and connecting with other artists, and I just love that for her. Like, I love Feyre so much. And yeah, other than that, there's not much to say. It was not a full plot. It's very much just transitioning to the second half of the series. And then A Court of Silver Flames, I also gave 4 stars, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to give it 5 stars. I will say I really enjoyed Nesta's character development. I think that was the strongest part of the book. I think it was done extremely well. And I really love the Valkyrie plotline. I don't know, I enjoyed a lot of things about this book. I didn't care about Cassian and Nesta at all. Like, I just was not feeling it. It was not there. And there were so many sex scenes, which, like, I usually just, like, skim over, but there were so many of them. And then the plot is kind of just a watered-down repeat of A Court of Mist and Fury in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'm giving this a low 4 out of 5 stars. I really like our 2 new characters, Gwen and Emery, who are introduced. Absolutely adore them. I love Nesta's plotline. Didn't love the Feyre and Rhys plotline, but I don't think it was as bad as I was led to believe. Like, it wasn't great, but I was expecting it to be a lot worse. So, mixed feelings on that. So overall, I'm giving this a low 4 out of 5 stars. I don't want to call it my least favorite Sarah J. Maas book I've read so far. I don't love the first 2 Throne of Glass books either. I mean, like, I love them because they're the first 2 Throne of Glass books, but, like, compared to the rest of the Throne of Glass books, they're not as great. This is probably, like, in my bottom 3 Sarah J. Maas books. Still good, still enjoyable. Nesta's character arc is absolutely amazing. The rest of it, I don't know. So yeah, I finished acotar. That's exciting. And then I also meant to read the first 2 Crescent City books this month. I didn't do it. I made it like a couple dozen pages into the first Crescent City book, but it's fine. It's okay. We're getting through it. Moving on. Next up, I read The Getaway List by Emma Lord, and this was another arc, and I love it. It's just, I'm an Emma Lord stan forever. Absolutely peak YA contemporary. This is actually my favorite book of hers. I give it 5 stars, obviously. So this follows our main character, Riley, who moves to New York City the summer after she graduates high school to reunite with her childhood best friend, who has since been her long-distance best friend, whose name is Tom. They kind of like set out to complete this bucket list they've been doing of like what they'll do when they're reunited. And it's just like New York City hijinks, and it's also coming of age, and Riley kind of figure out what she wants to do with her life. I love their like cast of friends, and it's just so fun. I love all their adventures. I love the secondary characters. I love the main friends to lovers romance, and it's just great. Absolutely recommend. If you like YA contemporary, then read this. It's amazing. My only complaint is there are a few too many references to TikTok and AO3, but it's still fine. I don't think it will date the book too much. There are some books where they use like pop culture references from like the year before they're published, and they're already dated by the time they're published. But I feel like TikTok and AO3 they're not going to instantly date it in the same way, so I think it's fine. And yeah, I just love all the coming of age aspects of this. I love all the characters' different story arcs, and they all complement each other so well, and it's so good. Read The Getaway List. So then I read An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson, which was a bit of a disappointment. I gave it 3.5 stars. I was expecting to give it 5 stars, but it's okay. We're thriving. This is a standalone fantasy. It's set in World with Fairies. Our main character, Isabel, is an artist. She does portraits for the fair folk in exchange for enchantments. When she ends up painting the Autumn Prince, Rook, she makes a mistake, and so he has to like take her back to his kingdom to stand trial. And there's some forced proximity, dislike to lovers. It's a good time. It's just, I don't know, I was expecting to love this. It's an artist protagonist, and it's fairy courts, and it's forbidden love. And Sorcery of Thorns, which is also by Margaret Rogerson, was one of my favorite YA fantasy books I read last year. So I thought this was going to be so fun. And so insta-lovey. There's no real appeal or characterization to the love interest in the first half. He gets better in the second half. The secondary characters are good, but they really don't start getting introduced until the second half. I think this would have been better if it had like 100 more pages to be more like the length of a usual YA book, and it used those opportunities to flesh out the characters more and also give a little more depth to the plot. I can't give it, it's 3.5 stars. Like, it was pretty decent, the writing was beautiful. I really enjoyed the second half, but like, it's overall not great. Pretty good. Not amazing. And then speaking of not amazing things, we have another 3.5 stars, which is honestly higher than I was expecting to rate it, which is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. This was so bad. Or it wasn't bad, I gave it 3.5 stars. Very addicting. It's just, I might actually bump this down to 3 stars. The issue is like, there's no character depth or development, but it's a very compelling slow burn romance. The love interest is a star football player, and then the protagonist is Vanessa, who's his assistant, and then she quits to work on her graphic design. They end up in a marriage of convenience. It's a super addicting slow burn. It's just there's no character development at all. There's no character depth. Some of the side characters have minor plot lines, but they're not developed. If you're looking for slow burn romance, and like a really slow burn romance, then this is for you. If not, read something else. I think I ended up giving it 3.5 stars instead of 3 stars because I would still reread it. Like, it wasn't great, but I would reread it if I was looking for just a super slow burn and didn't want to read, like, fan fiction for it. But it wasn't good, so do with that what you will. I might bump it down to 3 stars. It was a time. And then I reread Frankenstein for a class, so that was a good time. 4 stars. It's not one of my favorite classics, but, like, it's obviously well written and super interesting to read. My teacher this time around was really good at teaching it, and it was so interesting. It was for a speculative writing class, and it was just so interesting to read in that context. I really enjoyed it. I think the first time I read it, which was over 3 years ago, it was definitely like a lower 4 stars. Now it's a higher 4 stars, but still not quite at like 4.5, you know? Like, I definitely enjoyed it more, but not enough to bump up my rating. I'm not going to explain what the plot is. It's Frankenstein. And then we have The Third Daughter by Adrienne Tooley, who is another of my favorite YA fantasy authors. She always does such good sapphic romance. I love her. The plot's a little confusing. In this kingdom called Vel, state religion is worshipping this figure called the New Maiden. There's a prophecy when she died, I think, that she would eventually return as the third daughter of a third daughter. This prophesized child is born to the Queen of Vel. Her older sister, Elodie, who had previously been slated to be queen, loses her claim on the crown when the church, where, by the way, one of the leaders of the church is the father of the queen's third daughter. But the church basically, like, pushes for her to be named heir instead of Elodie. And she is. When Elodie's mother unexpectedly dies at the start of the book, then Brienne, who's the younger sister, who's still only like 12, or I think 13, but she's pushed onto the throne and not ready, and the church is like seizing power. Elodie goes and buys a sleeping potion from Sabine, who's our love interest. She basically, her sadness turns into magical tears that are like pure magic. And then Elodie purchases a potion from her, but accidentally gets the wrong one, and so she meant to put her sister to sleep for a little bit, but she ends up going permanently. It's complicated, and then they have to work to save her sister. I love our like morally gray sapphics. The romance is so cute. I really enjoy the plot. I did see some of the twists coming pretty far away. It's a good time. I really liked the exploration of the interaction between the state and the church in this kingdom, and it's a really interesting type of conflict that I don't usually see explored in YA. It was just a good time. And yeah, I'm excited to see where the story goes. It's a duology, and I think the second book's coming out sometime this year. The last book I read in January was Us Against You by Fredrik, which is the second book in the Beartown trilogy. I loved Beartown like every other book I've ever read by Fredrik. I gave it 5 stars. He is one of my favorite authors. Us Against You was the first book I gave 4 stars by Fredrik, mainly just because to me it felt a little plotless. Like, there's a lot of interesting things happening, and I really love most of our characters. Not all of them, but most of them. And I'm guessing I'll enjoy the third book more than the second one. The second one feels more like a transition between the two. Yeah, it's basically just in the wake of the first book. Tensions are rising between these 2 rival small towns surrounding their hockey teams. I really can't say more than that without talking about the extent all of the first book. So yes, I love all our characters, or almost all our characters. It's so good. Fredrik has such a great way of writing people and character arcs and communities. It's really good. I just gave it 4 stars because like I would have loved a little more structure to the plot, and it feels like it ends pretty abruptly. Still extremely good, but only 4 stars, not 5. And yeah, I'm hoping to read The Winner soon. I don't own it, but it is available on Kindle Unlimited, so I'll probably be reading it on that until I buy it in paperback. I don't know if it's out in paperback yet or not. So those are all the books I read in January. It was a pretty successful reading month. I would have loved to have read a few more books on my TBR, but considering we are 2/3 of the way through February and I've read 0 of the books on my February TBR, I really can't complain about reading most of the books on my TBR in January, because it was still more of a success than February is currently shaping up to be. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. It was a pretty decent month to start off the reading year. I think I would have loved for it to be a little better, but still really enjoyed it. Some really good reads, lots of 4 stars. And yeah, thanks so much for watching this video. You can find me on Goodreads, Storygraph, Instagram, and my blog at the links in my bio. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps me out. And I'd love to hear what books you read in January or February. And yes, thanks again for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you later.